She entered the dojo like a whisper, 72 years old, black, widowed 6 months, carrying grief heavier than the simple gym bag on her shoulder. The teenagers snickered. The parents exchanged knowing looks. Connor Wilson, 16 and cocky, dubbed her Grandma Turtle before she'd even finished her first push-up. For weeks they ridiculed her careful movements, her labored breathing, her refusal to quit despite their cruelty. Then came the day Connor tried to trip her, expecting her to fall flat. Instead, she rolled with liquid grace and rose like smoke. The day Sensei Tanaka retrieved an old photograph from his files and held it up with trembling hands. Evelyn Carter, 1975 national champion. The day he dropped to his knees and bowed until his forehead touched the mat, whispering a single word that changed everything. Hanshi. Master of Masters. The woman they'd mocked wasn't learning karate. She was remembering it, one devastating technique at a time. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The afternoon sun filtered through the high windows of the Riverside Martial Arts Academy, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor. The dojo hummed with energy as 23 students, ranging from 8 to 18 years old, moved through their warm-up drills. Their white GIs snapped with each punch, the sound echoing off the walls decorated with Japanese calligraphy and faded tournament photos. Sensei Tanaka stood at the front, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. At 58, he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had dedicated 4 decades to the art. His sharp eyes tracked each student's form, occasionally calling out corrections in his measured tone. "Connor, lower your stance," he instructed the 16-year-old star pupil. "Power comes from the ground up." Connor Wilson adjusted his position with practiced ease, his blonde hair damp with sweat. He threw another combination, this time with better form, and caught the approving nod from Tanaka. Around him, the other students continued their routines, the rhythmic counting in Japanese filling the space. The parents lined the observation area, some scrolling through phones, others chatting quietly. The smell of sweat mixed with the faint scent of the pine cleaner used on the mats created that distinctive dojo atmosphere that had remained unchanged for the 20 years since Tanaka had opened this place. The heavy wooden door slid open with a soft rumble. Every head turned. An elderly black woman stepped through the doorway, her movements careful but deliberate. Evelyn Carter stood 5'4" in her simple white sneakers, wearing a lavender cardigan over a plain gray t-shirt and black exercise pants. Her silver hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she carried a small navy gym bag in one hand. She paused just inside the threshold, taking in the scene before her. The counting stopped. The students froze mid-punch. Even the parents looked up from their phones. "Is she lost?" whispered Jennifer Thompson to the mother beside her, not bothering to lower her voice enough. "Maybe she's here to pick up a grandchild," replied Deborah Hale, Connor's mother, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer purse. Evelyn's dark eyes swept the room once before settling on Sensei Tanaka. She walked forward, her footsteps silent on the mat. The students parted automatically, creating a path, their expressions ranging from confusion to barely suppressed amusement. "Good afternoon," Evelyn said, her voice carrying a quiet strength that seemed at odds with her age. She stopped at an appropriate distance from Tanaka and performed a bow. Not the casual head nod most beginners attempted, but a proper ray, hands placed precisely on her thighs, back straight, eyes lowered for exactly the right duration. Tanaka's eyebrow lifted almost imperceptibly. "Good afternoon," he replied, returning the bow with equal formality. "How may I help you?" "I would like to join the beginner's class if you have space," Evelyn said simply. A snort of laughter escaped from Connor before he could stop it. He quickly covered it with a cough, but the damage was done. A ripple of giggles spread through the younger students. "She can't be serious," Connor muttered to his friend Tyler, loud enough for half the class to hear. "She's like 70. 72, actually," Evelyn said without turning around, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "And my hearing is excellent." Connor's face reddened, but he didn't apologize. Tanaka studied Evelyn for a long moment. Something flickered in his expression, gone too quickly for anyone to identify. "We welcome students of all ages," he said finally. "The beginners class has already started, but you may join us today. The changing room is through that door." "Thank you." Evelyn bowed again and headed toward the changing room. The moment the door closed behind her, the dojo erupted in whispers. "This is ridiculous," Deborah said to Jennifer. "She's going to hurt herself, and then what? A lawsuit waiting to happen." "Mom, chill," said Rachel Wilson, Connor's older sister, looking up from her college textbook. "It's just a beginner's class." "Your brother is in that class," Deborah pointed out. "They do contact drills. What if she falls?" "Then she falls," Rachel said, returning to her book. "People fall in karate. It's kind of the point sometimes." When Evelyn emerged 5 minutes later, she had changed into a plain black tracksuit. She walked to the back row where the newest white belt stood, taking a position behind a nervous-looking 12-year-old named Marcus who had started just 2 weeks ago. "Continue warm-ups," Tanaka commanded. 20 jumping jacks. Begin. The class moved in unison, counting in Japanese. Evelyn started the jumping jacks, her movements noticeably slower than the others. By the 10th repetition, her breathing had become audible. By the 15th, she had modified the movement to step touches instead of jumps. Connor shot a look at Tyler, mimicking Evelyn's modified movement with exaggerated slowness. Tyler covered his mouth to hide his laughter. Several other students noticed and began to giggle. "Eyes forward," Tanaka said sharply, though he didn't specify to whom. They moved to push-ups next. Evelyn lowered herself to her knees for modified push-ups while the rest of the class performed standard ones. Connor, positioned 2 rows ahead, glanced back and shook his head with theatrical disappointment. "This is painful to watch," Jennifer whispered in the observation area. "Why is Tanaka allowing this?" "Maybe he feels sorry for her," another parent suggested. Monica Davis, sitting slightly apart from the main group of parents, frowned. "Maybe she just wants to learn something new," she said. "What's wrong with that?" Deborah turned to look at her. "What's wrong is that this is a serious dojo, not a senior center activity hour. Some of these kids are preparing for tournaments." "She's in the beginner section," Monica pointed out. "She's not affecting anyone's training. She's affecting the entire energy of the room," Deborah countered. "Look at the students. They're all distracted." Indeed, most of the students kept sneaking glances at Evelyn as she worked through the warm-up exercises. Some watched with curiosity, others with barely concealed mockery. Only a few, including young Marcus in front of her, seemed unbothered by her presence. "New students," Tanaka called out. "Please introduce yourself to the class. State your name and why you wish to study karate." "Marcus, begin." Marcus stepped forward nervously. "I'm Marcus. I want to learn self-defense and get stronger." "Good. Welcome, Marcus." Next. 2 more beginners introduced themselves, both teenagers who mentioned fitness and discipline as their goals. Then it was Evelyn's turn. She stepped forward with surprising grace, her posture straightening. "My name is Evelyn Carter. I study karate because the body remembers what the mind sometimes forgets, and there are things I need to remember." The cryptic answer left a moment of confused silence. Connor rolled his eyes dramatically. "Welcome, Mrs. Carter," Tanaka said, a note of something unreadable in his voice. "Please, everyone return to your positions. We'll begin with basic blocks." As the class progressed through the fundamental techniques, Evelyn's form stood out, but not in the way the mockers expected. While her movements were slower and her stamina clearly limited, her stances showed an unusual precision. Her feet found the correct positions without looking down. Her hands moved through the blocks with a fluidity that seemed at odds with her apparent inexperience. "Mrs. Carter," Tanaka called out, causing everyone to look. "Your age-uke is good, but remember to rotate the wrist at the end. Like this." He demonstrated the upper block. "Yes, Sensei," she replied, adjusting her technique immediately. Connor leaned toward Tyler. "Great, she's teacher's pet already. Probably feels bad for Grandma Turtle." The nickname spread through whisper repetitions, reaching most of the class within minutes. At the end of the hour, Tanaka called for the class to line up for the formal closing. "Saiza," he commanded, and everyone knelt. Evelyn's descent to the kneeling position was slow, her hand bracing against her thigh, but she made it down without assistance. "Makuso," Tanaka said, calling for a moment of meditation. Eyes closed around the room. In the silence, Evelyn's breathing had finally steadied. When Tanaka called for eyes to open and the formal bows to begin, she moved through them with the same precision she'd shown at the beginning, her forehead touching the mat at exactly the proper angle. "Sensei and I-Rei," the class chanted, bowing to Tanaka. "Otagai and I-Rei," they said, bowing to each other. As the students rose and began to disperse, Connor made sure to walk past Evelyn. "Nice job keeping up, Grandma," he said with false sweetness. "Maybe next time you can try the real push-ups." Evelyn looked at him steadily, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Maybe next time you'll remember that in karate, the first battle is with your own ego." Connor's smirk faltered for a moment before returning full force. "Whatever you say, Grandma Turtle." As the students filed out, chattering and laughing, Tanaka approached Evelyn. She was using a small towel to wipe the perspiration from her face, her hands steady despite the workout. "The dojo is open for practice on Tuesday and Thursday evenings as well," he said quietly. "You're welcome to attend." "Thank you, Sensei," she replied, meeting his eyes. For a moment, something passed between them, a recognition of sorts, but neither acknowledged it aloud. As Evelyn gathered her things, she overheard Deborah talking to Jennifer by the door. "I give her 2 weeks, maximum. Once the soreness really sets in, she'll realize this was a ridiculous idea." "1 week," Jennifer countered. "Did you see how hard she was breathing? She's going to wake up tomorrow and not be able to move." Evelyn walked past them, her head high, her expression serene. At the door, she turned back and bowed once more to the dojo itself, a gesture of respect that only Tanaka, watching from his office doorway, noticed and appreciated. The walk to her car was slow, but steady. Her muscles already protested, and she knew tomorrow would bring the deep ache that comes from using long-dormant muscle memory. But as she drove home through the evening traffic, her hands on the steering wheel were steady, and for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt a flicker of something she'd almost forgotten. Purpose. 3 days had passed since Evelyn's first class. Tuesday evening arrived with a spring thunderstorm that drummed against the dojo's roof, creating a rhythmic backdrop to the training. The beginners class was smaller tonight, only 15 students, but Connor was there, as was Tyler and a handful of the regular crowd. Evelyn entered quietly, already changed into her tracksuit. The conversations didn't stop this time, but the whispers intensified. She had become the dojo's newest source of entertainment. "Look who's back," Connor announced to no one in particular. "Grandma Turtle returns." Connor, Rachel warned from the observation area where she was studying. She'd driven him tonight while their mother attended a charity function.
"What?"
"I'm just surprised she can still walk after Thursday," Connor said with false innocence. That was a pretty intense warm-up for someone her age. Evelyn proceeded to her spot in the back row without acknowledging the comment. Marcus, the 12-year-old beginner, gave her a small smile which she returned. "You came back," he said quietly.
"So did you," she replied.
"That's what matters." Tanaka entered, and the class began immediately. Tonight's focus was on basic stances, moving from horse stance to front stance to back stance in flowing combinations. It was foundational work, the kind that builds the muscle memory essential to everything else in karate. "Grandma Turtle's looking a little stiff," Connor whispered to Tyler as they moved through the positions. He exaggerated a creaky, slow-motion version of the stance transitions, drawing snickers from those nearby. But something was different tonight. While Evelyn's movements remained measured and careful, her stances were surprisingly solid. Her horse stance was low and stable, her weight perfectly distributed. When Tanaka called for them to hold front stance for 60 seconds, she remained steady while several younger students began to wobble. "Mrs. Carter," Tanaka called out, walking through the rows. "Your back stance, demonstrate for the class." Evelyn stepped forward and dropped into the stance. Her back leg carried 70% of her weight, her front foot light and ready, her posture upright and balanced. Notice the alignment, Tanaka told the class. This is correct form. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Connor's jaw tightened. As Evelyn returned to her position, he stuck his foot out slightly as she passed. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to catch her toe. Evelyn's foot hit his, and she stumbled forward. But instead of falling flat as Connor expected, she converted the stumble into a controlled forward roll, coming up smoothly on one knee before standing. It happened so fast that several students weren't sure what they'd seen. Sorry, Connor said loudly. Didn't see you there. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Awareness of your surroundings is crucial in karate, she said evenly. You should work on that. Tyler coughed to cover a laugh, but this time he was laughing at Connor's reddening face rather than at Evelyn. In the observation area, the parents had noticed the interaction. Monica Davis frowned deeply. Did Connor just try to trip her? Don't be dramatic, said Jennifer, though she'd seen it too. Kids horse around. She shouldn't be out there if she can't handle it. That wasn't horsing around, Monica insisted. That was deliberately cruel. Well, maybe if she wasn't here taking up space and slowing down the class, the kids wouldn't be frustrated. Deborah had arrived, having left her charity event early. She was still in her cocktail dress and heels, looking out of place in the modest dojo. Monica turned to face her fully. She pays the same fees as everyone else. She has every right to be here. Rights and wisdom aren't the same thing, Deborah said coolly. Someone her age should know her limitations. Someone your age should know better than to teach your son that bullying is acceptable, Monica shot back. The tension in the observation area was palpable. Rachel looked up from her textbook, watching the exchange with interest. On the mat, the class had moved on to practicing basic combinations. Punch, block, punch, kick. The movements were performed in the air, no contact, but the energy and intention were meant to be real. Evelyn worked through the combinations steadily. Her punches lacked the snap of younger students, but her technique was clean. More interesting was her footwork, the way she shifted her weight and maintained her center of balance. It was subtle, the kind of thing only an experienced martial artist would notice. Tanaka noticed. Partner drills, he announced. Find a partner of similar size and skill level. We'll practice control and distance. The students quickly paired off. Connor made a beeline for Evelyn before anyone else could approach her. Guess you're with me, Grandma, he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Connor, you're with Tyler, Tanaka said firmly. Mrs. Carter, you'll work with Marcus. Connor's face darkened. But Sensei, Marcus is a kid. I thought you said similar size and skill. I said what I meant, Tanaka interrupted. Positions everyone. As the pairs worked through slow, controlled exchanges, Evelyn guided Marcus with unexpected skill. She didn't just block his techniques. She showed him micro-adjustments that improved his form. Turn your hip more when you punch, she said quietly. Power comes from rotation, not just your arm. Marcus tried again, and his face lit up when he felt the difference. That's so much better. How did you know that? Just something I picked up, Evelyn replied with a small smile. After class, as students filtered out into the rainy evening, Evelyn stayed behind to stretch. The dojo was nearly empty, just her and the janitor starting his evening routine. She moved through a series of stretches that were clearly not beginner level, her flexibility surprising for her age. From his office, Tanaka watched through the half-open door. His hand rested on an old filing cabinet, one he hadn't opened in years. Inside, he knew, were tournament records from the 1970s and 80s. Records that included a name he hadn't thought about in a very long time. At home that night, Evelyn sat in her small kitchen, a cup of tea cooling in front of her. She reached for a photo album on the shelf, one she hadn't opened in months. The pages were filled with memories from another life. There she was at 25, wearing a crisp white GI with a black belt, holding a trophy that was almost as tall as she was. Next to her stood Harold, her late husband, his proud smile frozen in time. I know you'd understand, she said to the photo. I need to do this. Not for them, but for me. She turned the page and found another photo, this one showing her teaching a class of young students. In the background, barely visible, was a teenage boy with Japanese features, watching intently from the doorway. She traced a finger over the image, a sad smile crossing her face. The next Thursday's class brought new challenges. Connor had recruited more allies to his campaign of mockery. A group of teenage students had started calling her Grandma Turtle, openly, not even bothering to whisper. During stretching exercises, when Evelyn bent forward to touch her toes, Connor loudly said, "Careful, everyone. We might need to call life alert." The laughter was cruel and sharp. Even some of the parents smirked. But Evelyn's response was unexpected. She straightened slowly and looked directly at Connor. "You're right to be concerned about safety," she said calmly. "In fact, would you help me demonstrate something about safe falling? Unless you're afraid an old lady might hurt you." The challenge in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Connor's ego wouldn't let him back down, not in front of everyone. "Sure," he said, swaggering forward. "What do you need me to do?" "Just grab my wrist," Evelyn said, extending her arm. "Grip it tight, like you're trying to control me." Connor grabbed her wrist with excessive force, smirking at his friends. In one fluid motion, Evelyn pivoted, using Connor's own grip against him. She didn't throw him, didn't hurt him, but suddenly he was off balance, his arm twisted in a way that made him release immediately and stumble backward. "That's called using someone's strength against them," she said to the class. "In karate, as in life, the biggest and strongest don't always win. Control and technique matter more." Connor's face was burning red. The younger students were staring at Evelyn with new interest, some with awe. The parents had gone silent. "That was Aikido, actually," Tanaka said, stepping onto the mat. "Not part of tonight's curriculum, but an excellent demonstration of principles. Thank you, Mrs. Carter." After class, Connor stormed out to the parking lot where Rachel was waiting in the car. "She humiliated me," he fumed, throwing his gear bag in the back. "You've been humiliating her for a week," Rachel pointed out, starting the engine. "Seems like karma to me." "Whose side are you on?" "The side that doesn't pick on 72-year-old women," Rachel said flatly. "Seriously, Connor, what is wrong with you? You used to be a decent person." "She doesn't belong there," Connor insisted. "She's making a mockery of everything we've worked for." "The only person making a mockery of anything is you," Rachel said. "And trust me, everyone can see it." That night, Monica invited Evelyn for coffee after class. They sat in a small cafe near the dojo, the windows fogged from the temperature difference between inside and outside. "Can I ask you something?" Monica said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "Have you studied martial arts before?" Evelyn considered her answer carefully. "A long time ago," she said finally. "In another life." "Why come back to it now?" Evelyn looked out the window at the passing cars, their headlights creating streams of light in the darkness. "My husband passed 6 months ago," she said quietly. "Harold. He was my anchor for 48 years. After he died, I felt like I was disappearing, becoming invisible. One day I couldn't remember what it felt like to be strong, to be capable. So, I decided to remember." Monica reached across the table and squeezed Evelyn's hand. "I'm sorry about your husband. He would have loved this," Evelyn said with a small laugh. "Me, back in a dojo, dealing with teenage boys who think they know everything. He always said I was too patient with difficult students." "Were you an instructor?" Evelyn's smile was mysterious. "Something like that." Unknown to either woman, Tanaka was at that moment in his office, an old tournament program spread on his desk. The black and white photo was grainy but clear enough. The caption read, "Evelyn Carter defeats defending champion to take women's Kumite gold medal." The date was 1973. He picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts until he found a number he hadn't called in years. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. "Lila? It's Tanaka." "Yes, I know it's been too long. Listen, I need to tell you something. You remember Evelyn Carter? Well, you're not going to believe who just walked into my dojo." The storm outside intensified, rain hammering against the windows as the night deepened. In her small apartment, Evelyn stood before her bathroom mirror, examining the bruises beginning to form on her wrist from Connor's grip. She touched them gently, then smiled. "Still got it," she murmured to her reflection, and for the first time in months, the woman looking back at her seemed familiar. The stage was being set for something bigger than any of them realized. The mockery had grown, but so had the cracks in its foundation. Some students were beginning to question what they thought they knew. Some parents were starting to see beyond their assumptions. And Evelyn Carter was just getting started. The following Tuesday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of spring evening that made the dojo feel stuffy despite the open windows. Evelyn had been attending classes for 2 weeks now, and her presence had become a source of constant tension. Tonight, that tension would reach a breaking point. Connor stood at the front of the class, demonstrating a combination for the newer students. His movements were sharp and powerful, designed more to impress than to teach. He finished with a spinning kick that made several younger students gasp in admiration. "That's advanced technique," Tanaka said mildly. "Tonight we focus on basics. Connor, please return to your position." Connor's jaw tightened, but he complied. As he passed Evelyn's spot in the back row, he muttered, "Try not to break a hip keeping up, Grandma Turtle." "Connor," Tanaka's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Stay after class. We need to discuss your attitude." "What attitude?" Connor protested. "I'm just concerned about safety. Right, Mrs. Carter? Sparring can be dangerous at your age." Evelyn turned to face him fully. "Are you proposing we spar, young man?" The dojo went silent. Every student turned to stare. In the observation area, parents looked up from their phones. Connor laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're joking, right? I don't fight senior citizens." "Light contact only," Evelyn said calmly. "Controlled technique. Unless you're afraid you can't control yourself." The challenge hung in the air. Connor's friends were watching, waiting. His reputation was on the line. "Sensei." Connor looked to Tanaka, expecting him to shut this down. Tanaka studied both of them for a long moment. "Light contact. Control only. First to 3 points." He paused. "Mrs. Carter, are you certain?" "Quite certain," she replied, already moving to the center of the mat. Connor followed, his confidence returning. He was 16, athletic, one of the best students in the dojo. She was 72 and had been training for 2 weeks. This would be easy. They bowed to each other. Connor immediately took an aggressive stance, bouncing on his toes. Evelyn stood still, her posture relaxed but alert, hands loose at her sides. "Begin," Tanaka said. Connor attacked immediately, with a straight punch aimed at her midsection. Evelyn stepped off the line with minimal movement, the punch missing by inches. Connor's momentum carried him forward, and she tapped him lightly on the back as he passed. "Point," Tanaka called. "Carter." Connor spun around, his face flushed. The younger students were whispering excitedly. He attacked again, this time with a combination, jab-cross kick. Evelyn parried the jab with a gentle deflection, slipped inside the cross, and caught his kicking leg with her hand, holding it just long enough to demonstrate control before releasing it.
"Point."
"Carter." "She's not fighting," Connor complained. "She's just running away." "I'm using your energy against you," Evelyn corrected. "Would you prefer I attack?" Connor's eyes flashed. "Yeah, actually. Show us what you've got, Grandma." Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. She moved forward for the first time, her approach so smooth it seemed like gliding. Connor threw a defensive punch, but she was already inside his range. Her palm touched his chest with barely any force, but her positioning and timing were perfect. Connor found himself stepping backward to maintain balance.
"Point."
Match to Carter. The dojo erupted in amazed whispers. Marcus actually applauded before catching himself. Connor stood frozen, unable to process what had happened.
"How?" Tyler asked from the sideline.
"How did she do that?" "Experience," Tanaka said simply. "Thank you both for the demonstration. Return to your positions." As Evelyn walked back to her spot, she passed Monica's son Leo, who had started classes the previous week. The 10-year-old looked at her with starstruck eyes. "Can you teach me that?" he whispered. "After class," she promised with a wink. Connor spent the rest of the session in sullen silence, his movements aggressive and sloppy. When class ended, he stormed out without waiting for his sister, ignoring Tanaka's request to stay behind. Rachel found him in the parking lot, kicking at loose gravel. "Heard you got schooled by a grandmother," she said, not unkindly. "Shut up." "Connor, seriously, what's your problem with her?" He whirled to face his sister. "She doesn't belong there. She's making everyone think karate is some joke that anyone can do. Or maybe," Rachel said carefully, "she's showing that karate is for everyone. And maybe, just maybe, she knows more than you think." "What's that supposed to mean?" Rachel pulled out her phone and showed him a photo she'd found online. It was grainy, clearly scanned from an old newspaper. The headline read, "Local woman wins national championship." The woman in the photo was young, but the face was unmistakably Evelyn's. Connor stared at the screen. That can't be her. Look at the name. Evelyn Carter. She was a champion, Connor. Like, a legitimate national champion. Connor grabbed the phone, zooming in on the photo. In the background, barely visible, was a banner with the year. 1975. "Why didn't she say anything?" he asked, his voice smaller now. "Maybe because people like you haven't given her a chance to be anything other than Grandma Turtle," Rachel said, taking her phone back. "Come on, let's go home." Inside the dojo, Tanaka had asked Evelyn to stay behind. They stood in his office, surrounded by trophies and certificates from decades of competition. "Why hide it?" he asked directly. "Your skill, your history. Why pretend to be a beginner?" Evelyn traced a finger along one of the trophies. "I'm not pretending. I am a beginner. The person who won those championships died when Harold got sick. I'm trying to find her again." "She's still there," Tanaka said. "I saw her tonight." "You saw reflexes," Evelyn corrected. "Muscle memory. That's not the same as being that person." Tanaka moved to his filing cabinet and pulled out an old poster. He unrolled it on his desk, revealing a tournament advertisement from 1974. There, among the featured fighters, was Evelyn's photo. "I was there," he said quietly. "I was 15, competing in the youth division. I watched your final match. You fought Yamamoto, 3-time defending champion. Everyone said you couldn't win. But I did," Evelyn said softly, staring at her younger self. "You didn't just win. You revolutionized women's kumite. The combination you used in the final point, that flowing redirect into a counterstrike, I still teach it. I call it the ghost technique because you made your opponent fight air." Evelyn smiled sadly. "I called it dancing with shadows. Harold came up with the name. He said I made my opponents chase shadows while I danced around them." "Teach it," Tanaka said suddenly. "Teach the ghost technique. Not as Sherhan Carter, not as a champion. Just as Mrs. Carter, sharing knowledge." "The parents would revolt," Evelyn pointed out. "They barely tolerate me as it is." "Some would. Others might surprise you." That night, Evelyn visited Harold's grave as she did every Tuesday. The cemetery was quiet, just the sound of wind through the old oak trees. She knelt by the headstone, her fingers tracing his name carved in granite. "I sparred today," she told him. "First time in 20 years. That boy, Connor, he reminds me of that cocky kid from the Chicago tournament. Remember him? You said I should have gone easier on him." She placed fresh flowers in the vase, white roses that Harold had always brought her after competitions. "I'm not ready to be Sherhan Carter again," she continued. "But maybe I can be something in between. Maybe that's enough." A figure approached from behind, footsteps careful on the gravel path. Monica appeared, holding Leo's hand. "I'm sorry," Monica said quickly. "We didn't mean to intrude. Leo insisted on bringing you these." She held out a small bouquet of hand-picked wildflowers. "For being awesome," Leo said shyly. Evelyn stood slowly, accepting the flowers with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. Would you like to meet my husband?" Leo nodded, and Evelyn introduced him to Harold through stories, telling him about the man who had supported her through every match, who had held ice packs to her bruises and celebrated every victory as if it were his own. "He sounds cool," Leo said when she finished. "The coolest," Evelyn agreed. As they walked back to their cars, Monica said, "I looked you up. After tonight, I had to know. National champion, 3-time regional champion, inducted into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame in 1982. That was a long time ago. Not so long that people have forgotten. There's a whole website dedicated to female martial arts pioneers. You're on it. They call you the Shadow Dancer." Evelyn stopped walking. "I haven't heard that name in decades. Why give it up?" "Harold got cancer," Evelyn said simply. "Aggressive, fast-moving. Fighting championships seemed trivial compared to fighting for his life. I retired. We focused on treatment, on time together. 30 more years together, because I chose him over trophies. No regrets."
None. But now.
Evelyn looked back toward Harold's grave. "Now I need to remember who I was so I can figure out who to be next." 3 days later, the dojo newsletter went out announcing the upcoming Family Demonstration Day. It was Riverside Martial Arts Academy's biggest event of the spring, where students showed their skills to family and friends. This year, Connor had convinced his mother to invite several potential donors, turning it into a networking opportunity. "We need to talk about the demonstration," Deborah Hale cornered Tanaka before Thursday's class. "Connor has been working on an advanced kata. This is his chance to impress the Morrison family. They're considering sponsoring our competition team. All students will have an opportunity to demonstrate," Tanaka replied evenly. "All students." Deborah's voice carried a warning. "Surely you're not planning to have certain beginners perform? It would reflect poorly on the dojo's standards. Every student who wishes to participate may do so." Deborah's expression hardened. "My husband and I donate $15,000 annually to this dojo. The Morrisons could triple that. I suggest you think carefully about your demonstration lineup." She walked away before Tanaka could respond, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. Connor had overheard the conversation. A plan began forming in his mind. If Tanaka wouldn't prevent Evelyn from embarrassing herself, maybe he could help that process along. During that evening's class, Connor approached Evelyn during water break. "Hey, Mrs. Carter," he said, his tone suspiciously friendly. "You're doing the demonstration day, right?" "I hadn't decided," Evelyn replied, wiping her face with a towel. "You should," Connor said. "Everyone does it. It would be weird if you didn't. People might think you're scared." Tyler shot Connor a confused look, but Connor ignored him. "I'm not particularly concerned with what people think," Evelyn said. "But Leo's performing," Connor pressed. "Monica told my mom. Don't you want to support him?" That gave Evelyn pause. She glanced toward Monica's son, who was practicing his basic kata with intense concentration. "I'll consider it," she said. Connor smiled.
Perfect.
Over the next week, Connor spread the word. "Grandma Turtle's doing a demonstration. This should be hilarious." He made sure everyone knew, building anticipation for what he assumed would be an embarrassing display. Monica tried to talk Evelyn out of it when she heard. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone," she said over coffee after class. "I know," Evelyn replied. "But Leo asked me to do it with him. He wants us to demonstrate together, show that age doesn't matter in karate." "That's sweet, but these people, some of them are cruel." "I've faced cruel before," Evelyn said quietly. In the 70s, being a black woman in martial arts meant facing cruel every day. This is nothing new. The morning of Family Demonstration Day dawned bright and clear. The dojo had been decorated with banners and flags. Chairs were arranged for over 100 guests. A professional photographer had been hired by the Hale family to document Connor's performance. Evelyn arrived early, wearing a new GI that Monica had helped her order. It was simple, white, pristine. She helped set up chairs, ignoring the whispers from parents who had arrived to claim front row seats. "Is she seriously going to perform?" Jennifer Thompson asked Deborah. "Apparently. Connor says she insisted on it." "This should be interesting," someone muttered. The demonstrations began with the youngest students. 5- and 6-year-olds performed basic techniques, their parents cooing and taking videos. Then came the intermediate group, showing more complex combinations. Leo performed his white belt kata with Evelyn standing beside him, matching his movements. Their synchronization was surprisingly good, the tall grandmother and the small boy moving in harmony. The audience applauded politely, though some seemed confused by the pairing. Then came Connor's group. He had prepared an advanced kata, full of jumps, spins, and explosive techniques. His performance was technically proficient, aggressive, and showy. The audience erupted in applause, especially the potential donors his mother had invited. "Excellent form," Mr. Morrison commented to Deborah. "Your son has real talent. He's been training for 8 years, Deborah said proudly. "He's our top student." Connor finished with a dramatic flying kick and landed in a perfect stance. As he bowed, his eyes found Evelyn in the crowd. He smirked. "Before we continue," Connor said, taking the microphone from Tanaka, "I wanted to recognize our newest student. Mrs. Carter, would you please come up? Everyone should see how welcoming our dojo is to students of all ages and abilities." The tone was respectful, but those who knew Connor heard the mockery underneath. Evelyn stood slowly. "That's not on the program," Tanaka said, reaching for the microphone. "Just trying to be inclusive, Sensei," Connor said innocently. "Mrs. Carter, please show everyone what you've learned." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Monica started to stand, ready to intervene, but Evelyn touched her shoulder gently. "It's all right," she said. Evelyn walked to the center of the mat. The crowd had gone quiet, a mixture of anticipation and second-hand embarrassment. Some had their phones out, ready to record what they assumed would be a disaster. She stood still for a moment, centering herself. Then she began. It started slowly, a basic kata that all beginners learned. But something was different. Each movement flowed into the next with a grace that transcended the simple techniques. Her breathing was audible, controlled, each exhale timed with her strikes. Then, without warning, the kata changed. She transitioned into something none of them had seen before, an advanced form that seemed to tell a story. Her movements spoke of battles fought and won, of losses endured, of strength found in stillness. The audience had gone completely silent. Even Connor's smirk had faded. Evelyn moved through techniques that shouldn't have been possible for someone her age. A jumping knee strike that seemed to float. A spinning combination that defied her earlier displays of limited flexibility. She wasn't just performing techniques. She was demonstrating mastery. As she reached the crescendo of the kata, something went wrong. Connor, standing at the edge of the mat, had accidentally knocked over a water bottle, sending water across the performance area. Evelyn's foot hit the wet spot mid-technique. The audience gasped as she started to fall. But Evelyn turned the fall into something else entirely. She converted it into a controlled roll, came up in a defensive stance, and continued the kata without missing a beat. What could have been a disaster became part of the performance, as if the fall itself was choreographed. She finished with a slow, powerful punch, holding the final position for 3 seconds before relaxing. The silence in the room was deafening. Then Marcus started clapping. Leo joined him. Monica stood up, applauding. One by one, others followed until most of the audience was on their feet. Connor stood frozen, the water bottle still in his hand. "How?" someone whispered. Tanaka took the microphone. "What you just witnessed," he said carefully, "was a master's cut. The form Mrs. Carter performed hasn't been seen in this dojo before because it requires decades of training to execute properly." "But she's a beginner," Deborah protested from her seat. "No," Tanaka said, looking directly at Evelyn. "She's not." He walked to his office and returned with a framed photograph, one that had been stored away for years. He held it up for everyone to see. It showed a young Evelyn in competition, executing a perfect flying kick, her opponent already falling. The caption read, "Evelyn Carter, 1975 national champion." "This," Tanaka announced, "is Shirhan Evelyn Carter, 5-time national champion, pioneer in women's martial arts, and one of the first Black women to break the color barrier in competitive karate. She trained under Master Sato, the same teacher who trained me. In the hierarchy of this art, she is my senior. She is everyone's senior." The revelation rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Why didn't you say anything? Connor asked, his voice cracking. Evelyn looked at him with compassion rather than triumph. Because a true martial artist doesn't need to announce their strength. They demonstrate it through their character. I came here to rediscover something I'd lost, not to prove anything to anyone. But we. Connor couldn't finish. You showed me who you are, Evelyn said gently. Now you have a choice. You can learn from this, or you can let your ego keep you from growing. The same choice every martial artist faces every day. Mr. Morrison, the potential donor, stood up. Evelyn Carter, would you consider teaching a special class? I'd be honored to sponsor it. Before Evelyn could respond, Tanaka stepped forward. Evelyn Carter is always welcome to teach here, but that decision is hers alone. All eyes turned to Evelyn. She looked around the room, at the stunned faces, at Connor's shame, at Monica's proud smile, at Leo's excited bouncing. I'll teach one class, she said finally. Next week. A class about humility, respect, and the true meaning of strength. Everyone is welcome, regardless of age or ability. As the crowd dispersed, Connor approached Evelyn, his head down. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I was horrible to you. Yes, Evelyn agreed. You were. Why didn't you destroy me? That first sparring match, you could have embarrassed me completely. Because destroying you would have taught you nothing except that might makes right. You already believed that. I wanted to teach you something different. Did you? Evelyn smiled. That remains to be seen. The lesson has been offered. Whether you learn from it is up to you. As she walked away, Connor called out, Evelyn Carter? She turned. Will you teach me? Really teach me? Ask me again next week, she said. After you've had time to think about what you really want to learn. That evening, as the dojo emptied and the sun set over Riverside, Tanaka found Evelyn sitting alone in the meditation corner. It's out now, he said. Your secret. It was never really a secret, she replied. Just a past I wasn't ready to reclaim. And now? Evelyn stood, her movements showing the day's exertion. Now I remember why I love this art. Not for the trophies or the recognition, but for moments like today. When a young man starts to question his assumptions. When a community sees strength in unexpected places. Will you really teach? One class, she confirmed. But not as the champion I was. As the teacher I've become. Tanaka bowed deeply. It would be an honor to have you. As Evelyn left the dojo, she found a small crowd waiting outside. Parents, students, even some who had mocked her. They parted respectfully as she passed, some bowing, others simply nodding. Connor stood with his sister Rachel, and as Evelyn passed, he bowed properly for the first time. OSU, Evelyn, he said formally. OSU, she replied, acknowledging his respect. The storm that had been building for weeks had broken, but instead of destruction, it had brought clarity. The truth was out, and with it came the possibility of real change. In her car, Evelyn looked at herself in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back was neither the champion of her youth nor the invisible grandmother she'd become. She was something new, something forged from both past and present. All right, Harold, she said to the empty passenger seat. Let's see what comes next. The morning after the demonstration, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, the black belt from the mysterious box laid out before her. The Japanese note, "It is time," was propped against her coffee mug. She ran her fingers along the worn silk, feeling the years embedded in its fibers. Beside it sat a framed photo of Harold in his hospital bed, still smiling despite the tubes and machines. Not yet, she whispered to his image. I'm not ready to be her again. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Tanaka holding a tea set and an old leather-bound scrapbook. May I come in? He asked. She stepped aside, and he entered her modest apartment, taking in the sparse decorations, the single chair that still sat at the dining table as if waiting for someone. Tea, Tanaka offered, setting up the traditional service on her table. You brought tea to my home? Evelyn asked, amused. Good tea requires ceremony, he replied, beginning the familiar ritual. As the water heated, he opened the scrapbook. I wanted to show you something. The first page held a faded photograph from a summer training camp in 1974. A young Evelyn stood at the front, demonstrating a throw, while a teenage Tanaka knelt in the front row of students, his white belt bright against his GI. You corrected my stance that day, Tanaka said, pouring the tea with practiced precision. I was trying to muscle through everything, using strength instead of technique. You walked over, adjusted my hips with just 2 fingers, and suddenly everything clicked. My knees have thanked you ever since. Evelyn studied the photo, her younger self frozen in time. I remember that camp. Master Sato brought his top students. You were so serious, so determined to prove yourself. And you were already Sherhan Carter by then, though you insisted everyone just call you Evelyn. Titles create distance, she said. I wanted to teach, not intimidate. Tanaka turned the page, revealing newspaper clippings, tournament brackets, action shots of Evelyn in her prime. In one, she was mid-flight, executing a jumping technique that seemed to defy gravity. The championships you won were impressive, he said. But what I remember most was how you treated your opponents. Win or lose, you helped them up, pointed out what they did well. You changed what it meant to be a champion. That was Harold's influence, Evelyn said softly. He always said the true victory was in lifting others up. Is that why you left? When he got sick? Evelyn sipped her tea, considering her words. The diagnosis came right before the '83 World Championships. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. The doctors gave him 6 months. I withdrew from competition that day. But he lived for 40 more years, Evelyn finished. Every treatment, every trial, every hope and setback. I was there. The dojo became a hospital waiting room. The GI became regular clothes. Sherhan Carter became Mrs. Carter, and I never regretted it for a second. And now I'm a widow trying to remember who she is when she's not half of something else. Tanaka reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope with Japanese characters on the front. This came for you, from Master Sato's daughter in Osaka. Evelyn's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter in elegant handwriting and an old photograph of Master Sato with a young Evelyn, both in formal poses. She read aloud. Sherhan Carter, my father spoke of you often before he passed. He said you understood the soul of karate better than anyone he taught. He left instructions that if you ever return to teaching, I should send you this. The mountain does not boast of its height, yet all can see it touches the sky. He wanted you to know that true strength needs no announcement. It simply is. Tears rolled down her cheeks. He died 5 years ago, but his teachings live on, through you, through all of us he touched. That evening, Monica invited Evelyn for dinner at her cramped apartment. The table was small, the food simple, spaghetti with Jared sauce, garlic bread from a package, a salad of wilting lettuce. But Leo's excitement filled the space. Mom, did you see? Did you see Ms. Evelyn's kata? She was like whoosh, and then bam. He jumped around the tiny kitchen, mimicking her movements. Leo, settle down and eat, Monica said, though she was smiling. Can you teach me the spinning thing? Leo asked Evelyn. Please. That technique takes years to learn safely, Evelyn said. But I can teach you the foundation. Watch. She stood and demonstrated a basic hip rotation in the narrow space between table and counter. Everything starts here. Power comes from the center. She adjusted Leo's stance with gentle hands. Try now. Leo attempted the movement, his coordination still developing, but his enthusiasm boundless. Like this? Better. Practice that 100 times a day for a month, then we'll add the next piece. 100 times? Leo's eyes widened. Excellence requires repetition, Evelyn said. But I'll make you a deal. You practice, and I'll check your progress every week. After Leo went to bed, Monica and Evelyn sat on the cramped balcony, looking out at the city lights. I work 2 jobs, Monica said quietly. Customer service during the day, cleaning offices at night. I can barely afford Leo's karate classes, but it's the only thing that makes him feel confident. Strong. He has natural talent, Evelyn said. He has you, Monica corrected. Since you started teaching him those little adjustments, he walks taller. His teacher says he's standing up to bullies at school, not fighting, just not backing down anymore. That's the real power of martial arts. Not the ability to hurt, but the confidence not to need to. Monica hesitated, then asked, "Why did you really come back?" "The real reason." Evelyn looked at the stars barely visible through the city's glow. 6 months ago, I was at the grocery store. A young man pushed past me, knocked my purse off my shoulder, didn't even notice. I realized I'd become invisible. Not just old, but truly unseen. Harold always saw me, even at my weakest. Without him. She trailed off, then continued. I found myself looking at old photos, videos of matches. I didn't recognize the woman in them. She was so strong, so certain. I needed to know if any part of her was still in me. And is she? Pieces. Different now, seasoned by loss and time. But yes, she's still there. The next morning, Connor's father, Richard Hale, arrived at the dojo in his expensive suit, his face tight with barely controlled anger. This is unacceptable, he told Tanaka. You let us believe that woman was a beginner. We made fools of ourselves. You made assumptions, Tanaka replied calmly. Evelyn Carter never claimed to be anything other than what she is. She's a liability. Parents pay premium prices for your reputation. If word gets out that some grandmother is actually running things. She's not running anything. She's a student like everyone else. A student who's apparently your superior? How does that work exactly? Tanaka's expression hardened. Mr. Hale, karate is built on respect and hierarchy. Evelyn Carter earned her rank decades before I earned mine. That will always be true, regardless of current circumstances. Then maybe we need to reconsider our family's investment in this dojo. That's your choice. But Connor is welcome to stay regardless of your financial contribution. His growth as a martial artist and a person is what matters here. Richard stormed out, pulling out his phone as he went. Within hours, emails were circulating among the parent group with a subject line, "Concerns about dojo management." That afternoon, Connor arrived for practice early. He found Evelyn already there, working through slow, meditative movements in the corner. "Evelyn Carter," he said hesitantly. She stopped and turned to him. "Just Mrs. Carter is fine, Connor. I wanted to apologize. Again. Properly." He bowed formally, holding it longer than necessary. "I dishonored the dojo, my training, and you. I have no excuse." Apology accepted. But Connor, words are easy. What matters is what you do next. That's why I'm here. My dad wants me to quit. He says this place is a joke now. But I want to learn. Really learn. Not just techniques, but what you know. The real stuff. Evelyn studied him. Why? Connor struggled to find words. Because yesterday, when you turned that fall into part of your kata, when you could have been hurt or embarrassed but instead made it beautiful, I realized I've been training all wrong. I've been trying to look strong instead of being strong. And what's the difference? I don't know. That's why I need you to teach me. Evelyn nodded slowly. Help me set up for class. We'll start there. Tanaka addressed the class before warm-ups. It has come to my attention that there are concerns about training safety and age-appropriate activities. Let me be clear. This dojo has always been and will always be open to anyone willing to learn, regardless of age, ability, or background. But Sensei, Deborah called out from the parent area. Surely there are liability issues. Mrs. Hale, if you have concerns, please schedule a meeting. This is class time. Evelyn raised her hand. Sensei, may I propose something? Tanaka nodded. I'd like to start a free supplementary class. Balance and basics. Open to anyone but specifically designed for those who might benefit from modified training. Seniors, people with mobility challenges, anyone who wants to work on fundamentals at a different pace. That's segregation, Deborah protested. That's accommodation, Monica countered. And it's voluntary. I'll help teach it, Connor said suddenly, surprising everyone, including himself. I mean, if Shirhan, Mrs. Carter, would let me. I could use more work on basics anyway. Leo's hand shot up. Me too. I want to help. And me, Marcus added quietly. Tanaka looked at the students volunteering, then at the divided parents. Approved. Saturday mornings, no charge. Mrs. Carter will lead, with student assistance. That first Saturday, 8 people showed up. 3 seniors from the community center where Evelyn had put up flyers, 2 kids with mild disabilities whose parents had been hesitant about regular classes, Leo and Connor as assistants, and, surprisingly, Jennifer Thompson. My wrist, she explained sheepishly. I tried to show my daughter a kick at home and hurt myself. I thought maybe starting with basics would help. Evelyn paired everyone across generations. Connor worked with an elderly veteran named Bill who had balance issues from an old injury. Leo partnered with a young girl with cerebral palsy named Amy, both of them giggling as they worked through modified stances. The key, Evelyn explained to the group, is that every body is different. What matters isn't matching some perfect form, but finding what works for your body while maintaining the principle of the technique. She moved through the pairs, adjusting, encouraging, never comparing one to another. When Jennifer struggled with a movement that aggravated her wrist, Evelyn showed her an alternative that achieved the same result. I didn't know you could modify techniques like that, Jennifer said. Karate is supposed to serve us, not the other way around, Evelyn replied. The old masters adapted techniques for their bodies. Why shouldn't we? By the end of the session, Jennifer was moving with less pain and more confidence. As she left, she paused at the door. I owe you an apology, she said to Evelyn. I was one of the ones who said things. I was wrong. Apology accepted, Evelyn said simply. See you next week? Definitely. But not everyone was warming to the changes. Deborah had begun organizing a formal complaint to the dojo's board of directors. She'd gathered financial records showing that 5 major donor families were concerned about the dojo's direction. The email leaked, Monica had a friend in the board, and suddenly alumni from years past began appearing at the dojo. Old students of Tanaka's, some now in their 40s and 50s, came to show support. They wore their old belts, faded and frayed, and stood quietly in the back during classes. What's happening? Leo asked his mother. They're protecting what matters, Monica explained. This dojo shaped who they became. They won't let money destroy its spirit. Wednesday brought a crisis. During regular class, Connor was working with Tyler on sparring drills. He'd been different lately, more controlled, more thoughtful. But old habits die hard. When Tyler landed a lucky punch, Connor's temper flared. He attacked aggressively, his control slipping. Tyler backed up, hands raised in surrender, but Connor kept coming. His foot swept out in a vicious kick aimed at Tyler's knee, a dangerous, potentially injuring technique. Evelyn moved faster than anyone had seen her move. She intercepted Connor's kick with a blocking technique that redirected his energy, sending him spinning but unharmed to the mat. Enough, she said quietly, but her voice carried absolute authority. Connor sat on the mat, breathing hard, his face flushed with shame.
I'm sorry.
I don't know what. Anger is a heavy GI, Evelyn said, loud enough for the class to hear. It weighs you down, makes every movement harder. You cannot fight effectively when you're fighting yourself too. She extended a hand to help them up. The moment you feel anger rising, you have a choice. Feed it or release it. The releasing is harder, but it's what separates a fighter from a martial artist. How do you release it? Connor asked, genuinely wanting to know. Practice. Like any technique, it requires repetition. Every time you choose control over chaos, it gets easier. But Connor, you must choose it. No one can do it for you. That evening, Connor stayed after class. Evelyn was there too, working through a slow, meditative kata. He watched from the edge of the mat until she finished. My dad wants to pull funding, he said. He and Mom are fighting about it. She thinks I should switch to the dojo across town, the one that focuses on competition. What do you think? I think I'm finally learning something real here. But if we pull our money and the Morrisons and the others do too, the dojo will survive or it won't, Evelyn said. But that's not your burden to carry. Your only responsibility is to your own journey. Rachel said you gave up everything for your husband. Championships, fame, probably money too. I gave up nothing, Evelyn corrected. I chose love over glory. I chose presence over performance. Those 40 years with Harold were worth more than all the trophies ever made. But now you're alone. No, Evelyn said, looking around the dojo. I'm not. Friday brought unexpected news. Coach Lila Park, whom Tanaka had contacted weeks earlier, had agreed to visit. She was now a renowned instructor in her own right, running a successful dojo in California. She arrived unannounced during evening class, a striking woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and an athlete's bearing. She stood in the doorway watching until Evelyn noticed her. The two women looked at each other across 25 years of history. The last time they'd been in the same room, they were opponents in a championship final that had become legendary. Hello, Evelyn, Lila said. Hello, Lila. The class had stopped, sensing something momentous. Lila walked onto the mat and bowed deeply. I've owed you a debt for 25 years. You saved my life. That's dramatic, Evelyn said with a small smile. It's accurate. Lila turned to address the confused students. In our championship match in 1982, I was dehydrated, exhausted, pushing too hard. I collapsed mid-technique. My head was going straight for the corner of the platform. Evelyn caught me, cushioned my fall with her own body. She gave up a certain victory to save me from serious injury. The match was voided, Evelyn said. You recovered and won the rematch fairly. I won because you were injured from saving me. 3 bruised ribs that you never reported. Lila pulled out an old envelope. My family wrote you a letter, thanking you. You never responded. There is nothing to say. Anyone would have done the same. No, Lila said firmly. They wouldn't have, and that's why I'm here. She turned to Tanaka. Sensei, I'd like to formally recognize Evelyn Carter's actions and her contributions to martial arts. I've brought something from the California Martial Arts Association. She produced a plaque. It read, Lifetime Achievement Award for Excellence in Martial Arts and Embodiment of True Warrior Spirit, Evelyn Carter. I don't need, Evelyn started.
No, Lila interrupted.
But we need to give it. The young ones need to see what real strength looks like. As Evelyn accepted the plaque with obvious reluctance, Connor started clapping. Slowly, then faster. Others joined in until the entire dojo was applauding. In the parent area, Deborah Hale gathered her things. This is ridiculous, she muttered. But when she looked for supporters, she found fewer than before. Jennifer Thompson had switched sides. The Morrisons were reconsidering. Even some of her strongest allies looked uncertain. The tide was turning. That night, Evelyn placed the plaque in her closet, next to Harold's things. She touched his old sweater, still hanging where he'd left it. It's getting complicated, Harold, she said softly. But I think you'd be proud. I'm finding my way back. Not to who I was, but to who I'm supposed to be now. Monday morning brought a new development. A letter arrived at the dojo from the City Youth Sports Foundation. They'd heard about the Balance and Basics program and wanted to offer a grant to expand it. $20,000 to create a formal adaptive martial arts program. Tanaka called Evelyn immediately. This could change everything. We could offer free classes to kids who couldn't otherwise afford it, seniors on fixed incomes, people with disabilities. But it would mean I'd have to formally teach, Evelyn said. Not just help out, but actually lead a program.
Yes.
Will you? Evelyn thought about Harold, about the promise she'd made at his grave to keep living, really living. I need to think about it. Take your time. But Evelyn, this is what you were meant to do.
Teach. Share.
Build bridges. As she hung up, Evelyn looked at the black belt still sitting on her kitchen table. For the first time since receiving it, she picked it up and held it against her waist, not tying it, just feeling its weight. Almost, she said to herself. Almost ready. The dojo hummed with preparation for Heritage Night, banners displaying the lineage of masters hanging from the rafters. Tanaka had conceived it as more than an event, it was a statement about what the dojo stood for. Photos spanning 50 years line the walls. Students who'd become doctors, teachers, police officers, parents. All of them shaped by these mats. Evelyn arrived early, as had become her habit, but tonight she carried something different. The black belt was folded carefully in her bag, though she hadn't decided whether to wear it. Mrs. Carter. Leo ran up to her, practically vibrating with excitement. Mom said you're going to show everyone the ghost technique tonight. Did she now? Evelyn smiled at Monica, who shrugged apologetically. I may have mentioned it, Monica admitted, but only because the balance and basic students have been asking. Bill especially, he says you move like water. Bill Watson, the 78-year-old veteran, had become one of Evelyn's most dedicated students. He approached now, his gait steadier than it had been 6 weeks ago when he'd first joined. Evening, Sensei, he said, the title coming naturally despite Evelyn's protests about formality. Just Evelyn, Bill. Not tonight, he said firmly. Tonight, you're our teacher. Own it. The dojo filled quickly. Parents, grandparents, siblings, and community members packed the space. The mayor had even shown up, having heard about the innovative senior program. In the back corner, Deborah Hale stood with her diminishing faction, arms crossed, clearly here under protest. Tanaka opened the evening with a welcome that drew from tradition. Karate is not just about the individual. It's about lineage, who taught us, who we teach, how wisdom passes from one generation to the next. A short film began playing on the wall, grainy footage from the dojo's early days morphing into recent clips. There, for just 2 frames, was young Evelyn executing a perfect kata, the image, so quick most missed it. But Connor saw it. He'd been watching for it. Tonight, Tanaka continued, we celebrate not just technique, but the spirit that connects us all. The first demonstration came from the youngest students, 5- and 6-year-olds whose enthusiasm made up for their still-developing coordination. Then came the balance and basics group. Bill and Amy, the girl with cerebral palsy, performed together, their movements modified but precise. Amy's mother wept quietly in the audience, seeing her daughter's confidence bloom. Leo and 3 other kids from the regular classes joined them, showing how the same techniques could be adapted for different bodies. The audience leaned forward, captivated by the inclusive display. This is beautiful, someone whispered behind Monica. Why didn't we always do this? Connor stepped forward next, but not for the solo demonstration everyone expected. Sensei, I'd like to request something different, he said formally. A learning exchange with Mrs. Carter if she's willing. The audience stirred. This wasn't on the program. Evelyn stood slowly, reading something in Connor's eyes, not challenge, but genuine desire to learn. What did you have in mind? You teach, I follow. Show me what I've been missing. They faced each other on the mat, and Connor bowed deeper than he ever had before. Evelyn returned it with equal respect. Attack me, she said simply. Connor hesitated. But, trust me. He moved forward with a controlled punch. Evelyn didn't block it in the traditional sense. Instead, she guided his momentum with an almost invisible touch, explaining as she moved. Force meets force creates collision, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. But if you redirect energy instead of opposing it. She demonstrated, and Connor found himself flowing past her, off balance but unharmed. Again, she instructed. This time Connor came with a combination. Evelyn moved through his attacks like water through rocks, never where he expected, always just out of reach. But she wasn't just evading, she was teaching. See how his shoulder telegraphs the punch? Watch his hip before the kick. Combat is conversation. Your opponent tells you everything if you listen. She stopped his next attack with a single finger to his wrist, applying pressure to a point that made his whole arm go numb. Strength isn't always about muscle, she explained. Understanding the body's mechanics gives you leverage. Connor's arm tingled back to life. How do you see everything before it happens? 50 years of practice, Evelyn said simply. And the understanding that fighting is the least important part of martial arts. Then what's the most important? Evelyn smiled. community, connection, lifting others up. She gestured to the audience.
This.
All of this. From the crowd, someone called out, "Show us the ghost technique." The chant spread, gentle but insistent. Evelyn looked at Tanaka, who nodded encouragingly. "I need a partner," she said. "Someone aggressive, who won't hold back." "I'll do it," a voice called from the back. A young man in his 20s stepped forward, Kevin Morrison, the donor's son, home from college where he was captain of the karate team. "I've heard about you," he said, not unkindly but with skepticism. "The ghost dancer. My grandfather used to tell stories." They squared off. Kevin attacked with the speed and power of youth, techniques sharp and precise. But Evelyn wasn't there. She moved around his attacks, through them, beside them, but never against them. It was as if she could see seconds into the future, already moving before he'd committed to each technique. Then she demonstrated why it was called the ghost technique. As Kevin threw a powerful roundhouse kick, Evelyn seemed to fade backward, just out of reach. His kick found air. But in the same motion, she'd somehow moved behind him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "The ghost isn't the one who disappears," she explained. "It's what your opponent becomes, fighting shadows while you remain solid." The audience erupted in amazement. Even Deborah Hale's mouth had fallen open. "Teach us," Kevin said, bowing formally. "Please." Before Evelyn could respond, Tanaka stepped forward with an envelope. "Before we continue," he announced, "I have something that must be shared." This letter arrived today from Master Sato's official successor in Japan. He opened it ceremoniously and read, "To the Riverside Martial Arts Academy, it has come to our attention that Shirhan Evelyn Carter has returned to teaching. Master Sato left specific instructions regarding this possibility. Should Shirhan Carter ever again take students, she is to be recognized with the title of Hanshi, Master Teacher, and acknowledged as Senior Instructor Emeritus of our lineage. This is not a request, but a fulfillment of Master Sato's final wishes." Tanaka walked to Evelyn and bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the mat. "Hanshi Carter, we are honored by your presence." The entire dojo followed, everyone bowing in a wave of respect. Evelyn stood frozen, overwhelmed. I didn't ask for this," she said softly. "The greatest teachers never do," Tanaka replied. Lila Park stepped out from the crowd. "There's more," she announced. "I've been in contact with the National Martial Arts Heritage Foundation. They want to document your techniques, your teaching methods, preserve them for future generations. And," she smiled, "they're offering a $50,000 grant to establish the Evelyn and Harold Carter Memorial Training Program." Evelyn's legs nearly gave out. Connor quickly brought her a chair. "Harold," she whispered. "I took the liberty of researching," Lila explained. Harold Carter was a civil rights attorney who did pro bono work for 3 decades. He deserves recognition too. Tears flowed freely down Evelyn's face. Monica rushed over with tissues, and Leo hugged Evelyn's arm tightly. "But there's a condition," Lila continued. "You have to formally teach. Not just help, not just guide, but actually lead the program." Evelyn looked around the room, at Connor's hopeful face, at Bill and Amy and the other balance and basic students, at Leo bouncing with excitement, at Tanaka's respectful patience. She reached into her bag and pulled out the black belt. With steady hands, she tied it around her waist for the first time in 20 years.
"Then I'll teach," she said.
The applause was deafening. But in the corner, Deborah Hale was pulling out her phone, texting furiously. The war wasn't over yet. As the evening continued, the city tournament organizer approached Tanaka and Evelyn. "We have an exhibition slot tomorrow at the regional championships," he said. "Would Hanshi Carter consider leading a mixed-age demonstration team? It would show what inclusive martial arts can really achieve." Evelyn looked at her students, all of them from every age and ability level. "Who wants to show the city what we can do?" Every hand shot up, even Connor's. "Then we'd better practice," she said with a smile. The morning of the regional championships dawned gray and humid, threatening rain. The Riverside team gathered at the dojo at 6 a.m. for final preparation. Evelyn had chosen an unconventional team, Bill Watson at 78, Amy with her cerebral palsy, Connor and Leo, two middle-aged students from Balance and Basics, and surprisingly, Rachel Wilson, who'd been secretly training. The point isn't to win anything, Evelyn reminded them as they stretched. It's to show that karate belongs to everyone. Connor had been tasked with leading the youth portion while managing his still tender ankle from a training mishap the previous week. The tape around it was visible, but he moved without complaint. Leo, remember to breathe through the movements, Connor instructed, his teaching voice patient and clear. Amy, your modified stance is perfect. Don't let anyone tell you different. Evelyn watched Connor teaching and saw what he could become, not just a fighter, but a teacher, a mentor. The transformation from the mocking boy of 2 months ago was remarkable. Mrs. Carter, sorry, Hanshi. Rachel approached nervously. My parents don't know I'm here. Then why are you? Because Connor's my brother, and he's finally becoming someone I'm proud of. I won't let our parents' prejudice stop me from supporting that. At the arena, the crowds were massive. Traditional tournament divisions competed on 4 mats while exhibitions were scheduled for the main stage. The Riverside team was slated for 2 p.m., right in the peak viewing time. As they waited, other teams warmed up with impressive displays of athleticism, flying kicks, breaking boards, synchronized forms that looked like deadly dances. Several competitors smirked at the Riverside group. Is that their team? Someone laughed, pointing at Bill. What's next, toddlers? Ignore them, Evelyn said calmly. Ignorance speaks loudest when it feels most threatened. But Connor's face had reddened. The old Connor would have snapped back, maybe even started a confrontation. Instead, he took a breath and helped Amy with her warm-up stretches. That's growth, Bill commented to Evelyn. Boys learning. Deborah Hale arrived just before their performance, Richard beside her. She'd come to witness what she assumed would be an embarrassment that would justify pulling their funding. She'd already lined up 3 other families ready to withdraw support. This is a disaster waiting to happen, she told Jennifer Thompson, who'd come to support the team. The only disaster here is close-minded people trying to destroy something beautiful, Jennifer replied, moving to sit elsewhere. When their time came, the Riverside team took the stage. The announcer seemed puzzled by the roster but read it as given. A special exhibition of inclusive martial arts, led by Hanshi, Evelyn Carter. They began with synchronized breathing exercises, all 8 members moving as one despite their different abilities. Then they flowed into technique demonstrations, each person showing modifications that worked for their body while maintaining the essence of the art. Bill demonstrated how balance techniques could be adapted for those with mobility issues. Amy showed that cerebral palsy didn't prevent precise hand techniques. The middle-aged students proved that starting later in life was still starting. Then came Connor and Leo's portion. Connor had choreographed a sequence where he appeared to be teaching Leo, but gradually their roles reversed, the child teaching the teenager, showing that wisdom doesn't always come with age. In karate, Evelyn's voice carried over the PA system as she narrated, we learn that strength has many forms. The strength to persist. The strength to adapt. The strength to support others. The routine built to a crescendo where all 8 team members performed the same kata, each in their own way, but unified in spirit. Bill's movements were smaller but precise. Amy's were modified but powerful. Connor's were controlled where they once would have been wild. For the finale, Evelyn stepped forward alone. At 72, she moved with a grace that transcended age. She performed the ghost technique sequence, seeming to fight invisible opponents, her movements telling a story of every student she'd ever taught, every challenge she'd overcome. The arena had gone silent, 5,000 people holding their breath. She ended with a simple bow, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the applause started. It began in one corner and spread like wildfire until the entire arena was on its feet. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. In the crowd, Deborah Hale stood frozen. Her husband Richard was clapping slowly, his expression thoughtful. Maybe we've been wrong, he said quietly. Richard, don't be ridiculous.
No, Deborah.
Look at our son. Really look at him. Connor was helping Amy off the stage, his face glowing with pride, not in himself, but in his team. He high-fived Bill, hugged Leo, and bowed respectfully to Evelyn. "When's the last time you saw him this happy?" Richard asked. "This genuine?" Deborah had no answer. After the exhibition, reporters surrounded Evelyn. "Hanshi Carter, your story is incredible. What made you return to teaching after 20 years? Evelyn looked at her team, then at the crowd where she spotted Monica wiping away tears. "Grief," she said honestly. "I lost my husband and thought I'd lost myself. But these students, this dojo, they reminded me that we're never too old to grow, never too broken to heal." "What's next for the program?" "We expand. The grants will let us offer free classes to anyone who needs them. Seniors, people with disabilities, kids who couldn't otherwise afford training. Karate should be accessible to everyone." Connor stepped forward. "Can I say something?" The reporters turned their cameras to him. "2 months ago, I was a jerk," he said bluntly. "I mocked Hanshi Carter, called her names, tried to humiliate her. I thought strength meant domination. She taught me that real strength is lifting others up. If someone like me can learn that, anyone can change." "Connor." Deborah pushed through the crowd, mortified. "Stop talking to them."
"No, Mom.
"I need to say this." He faced the cameras again. "I was a bully. Hanshi Carter had every right to destroy me, but instead she taught me. That's the kind of person she is. That's the kind of person I want to be." That evening, back at the dojo, an unexpected crowd had gathered. Alumni, current students, parents, and community members filled the space. Someone had brought cake. Someone else had strung lights. It had become an impromptu celebration. Tanaka called for attention. "Today, this dojo proved something important. We proved that tradition and inclusion can coexist. That respect matters more than revenue. That a true martial arts family includes everyone." "I'd like to say something." Richard Hale stepped forward, Deborah reluctantly beside him. "I came here planning to withdraw our funding. But watching my son today, seeing who he's becoming under Hanshi Carter's guidance, we're doubling our contribution. With one condition." Everyone held their breath. "That it goes directly to the Carter Memorial Program, to ensure that money never becomes a barrier to training here." The room erupted in surprised applause. Deborah managed a tight smile, her worldview shifting uncomfortably but inevitably. Monica grabbed the microphone next. "Leo has an announcement." Leo bounced forward. "I got the Spirit Award at school. My teacher said I've become a leader, helping other kids who get picked on. She wanted to know what changed, and I told her about Hanshi Evelyn and how she teaches us that everyone matters." Evelyn pulled Leo into a hug, her eyes bright with tears. As the celebration continued, Rachel found Connor sitting outside on the dojo steps. "Proud of you, little brother," she said, sitting beside him. "I was such an idiot." "Yeah, you were. But you're getting better." "Think I can ever make up for how I acted?" Rachel considered.
No.
"But you can do better going forward. That's all any of us can do." Inside, Evelyn stood before Harold's picture, which Tanaka had added to the dojo's wall of honor. "We did it, Harold," she whispered. "Not the way we planned, but maybe the way it was meant to be." Bill Watson approached with a glass of water for her. "My granddaughter wants to join the program. She's in a wheelchair. Think you can teach her?" "I can try," Evelyn said. "We all can try. That's all we need. Someone willing to try." As the evening wound down, Tanaka made one final announcement. "The board has made a decision. Hanshi Carter, we'd like to offer you the position of Senior Advisor for Tradition and Access, with full authority to shape our inclusive programs. The position comes with the dedication of our new wing, which will be called the Carter Center for Martial Arts Excellence." "I don't need a wing named after me," Evelyn protested. "It's not just for you," Tanaka explained. "It's for Harold too. For the idea that love and martial arts aren't separate. That supporting others is the highest form of strength." Connor stepped forward with something in his hands, a new black belt with gold embroidery. "We had this made," he said. "Your name in English, Harold's name in Japanese. So you carry him with you always." Evelyn accepted the belt with shaking hands. The embroidery was beautiful. Evelyn Carter on one end, Harold Carter in Japanese on the other, connected by a thread pattern that looked like intertwined paths. "Teach me," Connor said formally, dropping to his knees in the traditional request position. Not just techniques, but everything. The philosophy, the history, the heart of it. "Me too." Leo knelt beside him. "And me," Rachel added, surprising everyone. One by one, others knelt: Bill, Amy, the balance and basic students, even some former skeptics. Soon, 30 people knelt before Evelyn, requesting formal instruction. "I'm 72 years old," Evelyn said, her voice thick with emotion. "I may not have many years to teach." "Then we'd better not waste any time," Connor replied. Evelyn looked at the assembled students, at Tanaka's approving nod, at Monica's encouraging smile. She thought of Harold, how he'd always said her greatest gift wasn't her fighting ability, but her capacity to see potential in others. "Classes start Monday," she announced. 6 a.m. for serious students. Beginners welcome. No one turned away, for any reason. "OSU," the students responded in unison. Later, as the dojo emptied and quiet returned, Evelyn stood alone in the center of the mat. She moved through a slow kata, the one Harold had loved watching her perform. As she moved, she felt him there, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a part of every technique, every breath. A sound made her turn. Connor stood in the doorway. "Sorry, I forgot my bag," he said. "Connor, that first day, when you called me Grandma Turtle." "I'm sorry." "No, let me finish. You were right. I was moving like a turtle, slow, protective, hidden in my shell. But turtles have been around for millions of years. They survive because they adapt, persist, and protect what matters. I was still wrong to mock you."
Yes.
"But your mockery woke something in me. The fighter I'd forgotten existed. So, in a strange way, I should thank you. That's generous. That's karate. Taking negative energy and transforming it into something positive." Connor bowed formally. "OSU, Hanshi." "OSU, Connor. See you Monday." As he left, Evelyn tied her new belt, feeling the embroidered names under her fingers. She looked around the dojo, at the photos of students past and present, at the banners showing lineage and connection, at the new sign already being mounted, the Carter Center for Martial Arts Excellence, where every body becomes strong. She thought back to that first day, walking in as a ridiculed grandmother, struggling through basic exercises while children laughed. Now she stood as Hanshi Carter, recognized master, teacher of teachers, bridge between tradition and innovation. But more importantly, she stood as Evelyn, widow, survivor, teacher, student, and living proof that transformation has no expiration date. The door opened one more time. Monica entered with Leo, who was carrying a small potted plant. "For the new center," Leo explained. "Mom says it's a bonsai. It's really old, but still growing." "Like me?" Evelyn laughed, accepting the gift. "Like all of us," Monica corrected. "Growing, changing, becoming who we're meant to be." As they left together, discussing plans for the new program, the dojo settled into peaceful silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full of possibility, of futures being written, of legacies beginning. On the wall, Harold's photo seemed to smile, a little wider. The next morning's newspaper would run a headline, "72-year-old grandmother revolutionizes martial arts." But Evelyn wouldn't see it. She'd be too busy teaching the 6 a.m. class, where 37 students of all ages and abilities would gather to learn not just how to fight, but how to live with strength, honor, and compassion. Connor would be in the front row, helping Amy with her stances. Leo would be teaching Bill a breathing technique. Rachel would be learning her first kata. And Evelyn would move among them all, correcting, encouraging, building. Because that's what teachers do. That's what warriors do. That's what grandmothers who refuse to be invisible do. They transform mockery into respect, weakness into strength, and loss into legacy. One student at a time. One day at a time. One breath at a time. The dojo door would remain open, welcoming anyone brave enough to step inside and discover that true strength comes not from youth or ability, but from the courage to keep growing, keep learning, keep teaching others to rise. And in the Carter Center for Martial Arts Excellence, everyone would rise together. So I ask you this. How many times have you dismissed someone's worth based on what you saw on the surface, never imagining the battles they've won or the strength they carry in silence? If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe, because everyone deserves to have their truth revealed, one story at a time.